Hey, today I'm going to be showing you how I built a rack that supports 6 Klondike 16 Bitcoin miners. The rack uses minimal space and fans. For more information, plans, and a parts list, you can visit my site, starbean.com. That's Starbean with a 3. Hope you enjoy this video. Alright, so one of the first things I'm going to do, I'm going to cut up the main supports for the miner rack. As you can see, I already have them marked here. I like to use my speed square to help me line everything up. Make sure that the blade, I like to make sure the blade cuts just the right amount, so I take off just about the line. So we've got one cut at the right length. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do the other 3. Alright. Next we're going to cut the 1-inch strips that it's going to go in between each miner. To do that, I'm going to use this nice board that I got, recycled of course, because that's how I do pretty much all of my work. So yeah, I'll set that up and we'll cut that next. Now I have my recycled wood set up with this handy straight edge. They sell them at Home Depot or Lowe's. I got one and I love it because I don't have a table saw, nor do I have room to keep a table saw. So with this I'm able to measure out exactly how far I need to go and then set it up so that the saw can run right against the edges here and cut a nice straight line for me. So I just have to make sure that I'm not hitting my support underneath, because this board is very thin, maybe an eighth, quarter of an, not even a quarter of an inch I don't think. But so yeah, we're gonna go ahead and cut us one strip. We have a very rough edge. We'll sand that off later. I realized that my saw is not adjusted right for this, so I'll go ahead and adjust that and cut the next one. Alright, so in this shot, I'm making my first cut on these strips. These will go in between the miners. Now, one thing you'll notice is that I have to cut 3 strips out of each of these, but I did not measure all 3 at the same time because the saw blade width will take out a chunk. So I needed to cut, measure, cut, measure, cut. So now that I have the first of them done, and these don't have to be exact, although I believe they're actually closer than my previous cuts. But again, we'll do a little bit of sanding, clean them up some before they go on the final piece. But they don't have to be exact because they're not going to really butt up to anything. They're just going to hang over the edge or go up to the edge of the board. And if need be, we can sand them down some. So I'm going to go ahead and measure and cut the rest of them. Alright, so to attach my miner to these little pieces, it's actually going to be the bigger one. I am going to use, happen to have these to go with it. And I have the nuts and bolts to go with it. They're going to attach like that, like so. And this is going to go here. Now, to attach this piece to the board, I'm going to use some screws. So first, of course, I'm going to need to drill a hole all the way through these, otherwise it's going to split and break them. And I'm actually probably going to end up going out of it anyways, but there's going to be 2 screws in each side, so that should be able to hold it. I got a drill bit, which happens to be a 7/64. and it is going to be just wider than the threads of my screw. So I have a piece of scrap wood down here that I'm using for once it drills through. So with that, I'm going to drill the first one. I made a mark as to where the board comes up and meets it, and I have to make sure that my screw is outside of that. And on top of that, the screw is going to go into this wood, and it's going to be the very edge, so I'm going to push this hole as far to the edge as I can, which means I'm probably going to end up cutting through on that one side, but the screw should still hold it. So we'll go ahead and drill some holes on this first one. So I more or less ended up with a notch. We'll see how that works. It should work no problem. Basically, I'll have the screw. I'll even be able to just slide it in, tighten it down, and it should hold it without any issues. So we're going to do the second hole and see if that one comes out any better. So that one, so this one is actually going to be all the way in. It has the tiniest piece of plastic, tiniest piece of PCB, which is what this is made out of, or the same material as a PCB. It's got a hole and it makes it all the way through. If I can replicate this on a different board without making the hole all the way through, I have extras, and I'll be able to use that instead of this one. So we'll just have to see how it goes. Now I don't want to leave too much plastic, because if I do, then the screw will split out the side of the wood, and that would definitely not be good. So that one did turn out pretty well. Let's see if I can replicate the same thing on the other side. So both of those turned out, I think, really well. I'm going to go ahead and use this one. Put it on an actual piece of wood on one of these, and make sure that I can still screw it in and that it does not split the wood. So of course for that I'm going to drill pilot holes, so let's go ahead and do that now. So here I've set up sort of what it's going to look like once it's all attached. All I'm going to be doing here is measuring out where the holes are going to go. I don't like that side of the board, so I'm going to use this one. So I'm lining it up with both sides of my main support beams here. And all I'm going to do is make a little mark right at the edge, so I know where the top and bottom should be. I'm going to go ahead and carry this mark over so I can see it on this side, because this is the side I'm going to be drilling the pilot holes on. So, pretty hard to see. I have my two marks there. Now, I'm going to flip this over. See if I can get it to sit nicely on here so that I can line it up and drill pilot holes. It's sitting fairly nice. So for my pilot hole, I'm going to make sure that my bit covers up the center shaft of the screw, but doesn't cover up the threads. So the threads can still grip, but the center shaft won't push it apart so much that it splits the wood. So let me see if this one will do it. This one would work, but it might be a little small. This one will give me just enough grip on the screws. So we're not trying to send anything to Mars without it exploding. We're just trying to make sure that this doesn't move, so it doesn't have to be exact. So now I'm going to line everything up. Now these pilot holes are more than likely going to go all the way through, which that's fine. No harm done in that. I have it lined up. I have my two little pilot holes. So just judging by that, I can tell that this board layout, these two screw holes are going to work on this. So I'm going to go ahead and drill the rest of the holes out on all of the other boards. And hopefully I don't mess any of them up, but I do have spares, so that's good. So whenever it's finished, this is basically what this side is going to look like. So I set it up like this so that I can make all of my marks. So I'm going to do just like I did before on the test, and I'm going to mark where the board ends up. Now, one important thing to note is that all of my attaching boards, they're all different. So I like to do it as I go, drill pilot holes, go ahead and screw it in, then continue on with pilot holes to the next one, screw those in, so that I don't get confused, mismatch my boards, and end up with something that I can't use and I'll have to make a new piece for it. I did choose screws for multiple reasons. One is I like the strength that they provide. The second is that if I screw up, I can always go back, unscrew it, and start over again. One of the options I was thinking of was hot glue, but I didn't like it. I like the screws better. So we're going to go ahead, drill the pilot holes, and screw them in, and we'll see how it goes. So I realized that these screws are not your standard number 2, they're a number 1 screw. I don't really have an extension for this, at least I don't want to take the time to look for it, so I'm just going to try doing it by hand. We'll see how it goes. Now I've got it all set up. This is going to be basically the final product of one side. As you can tell, there are little screw points poking out here. Later I will get my Dremel and go ahead and grind those down. Just make sure that whenever you do that, there will be metal shavings. Do it in somewhere where you don't worry about metal shavings being, and that whenever you're done, you go ahead and clean off the board so that no metal shavings cause a short circuit and make the board no good. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drill pilot holes, just one on each along here. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the hole on this board is big enough so that the entire screw will pass through. Once that screw passes all the way through, then I'll drill the other pilot hole that's small enough for just the shaft, so that whenever it's done, it will suck the two boards together and keep them nice and tight. So yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. Alright, and with that, we finished one side of it. So whenever it's done, it's going to have a fan here. It's going to blow across the heatsink and cool it off. We're also going to have another Actually, this is going to be the left side if you're looking from the front. So we're going to have 2 more here and 2 more on this side. So we're going to have a total of 6 with an entry fan here, and if I need it later on, I will add an exhaust fan. So it'll be a nice little wind tunnel to keep everything cool. So I'm going to go ahead and build the other 2 sides. The last side is just going to be a straight piece of wood, and I will do that last more than likely. So yeah, I'll go ahead and put it all together and show you what it looks like. So I have finished my second board. It is all attached and ready to go. Now the third side that we're going to be doing is going to be the 2 other miners. So I'm going to see, I haven't really thought about how exactly I'm going to set these up so that I can mark them. But we're about to find out. I believe I should be able to just set them in there and it will give me the right locations. Because this is where they're going to have to go anyways. This will give me a good idea of where I need to mark these. And it turns out that the measurement I originally did was definitely not right. It was way too small. So I've gone back and cut the correct size to put in each location. So they're obviously not even this way, but all I need to do right now is get my marks in. Right. So they're all in the correct location. Switching back to my very small pilot hole bit, so I can drill the pilot holes for all of these. So now, flip it over and it should set right down between them. Now we're going to repeat the same process as before with drilling the pilot holes to the top board bigger than the pilot holes in the lower board. And take a quick second to change out my battery because this one is dead. And of course I knock everything over. Now, we've successfully completed 3 sides. And we have you can see where the air chute is going. You see where the air is going to go through. Pretty dark in there, I don't have the right lighting for that. But yeah, so the next thing that we're going to put on is going to be our bottom. We'll cover this area, and then we're going to build a nice tunnel or a nice facer for our fan. So as you can see, it doesn't really have a place to screw in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a square piece, and then we're going to attach, then we're going to cut out a circle for the airflow and attach the fan to that, so we'll have airflow going through, but it will have the rest of it closed off, so it should get a nice wind tunnel effect. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this bottom piece and attach it. I'll be right back with that. Alright, so now I've cut the bottom panel. This panel is going to go in the bottom of this channel along here. So now I need to drill some pilot holes, just like I did before. What I've noticed is that it doesn't quite line up. It's just a little bit bowed out, so I have to squeeze it in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill all the holes just in the top part first. Drill the pilot holes, 3 on this side, screw in this side. Then I'm going to switch over to this side, drill my a pilot hole in the middle to hold it together, get that in, and then I'll drill the other 2 pilot holes and drill the rest of it in. And with that, I will have a fully enclosed tube. So let's go ahead and get to that. Now, since this wood is really soft, I went ahead and used some regular sheetrock wood screws. With these, I am able to sink the head in pretty easily with using the drill. So I'm going to go ahead and drill the pilot holes and put these all in on one side, then squeeze it together, drill a pilot hole, and hold it all together. Since some of the connectors do stick out on the back side, I'm going to set it up on 2 other pieces of scrap wood so that I don't have to worry about messing up any of those connectors. Put it all the way out to the end. There, I have a nice bottom to that. Now I'm switching back to the small pilot hole drill bit. Now all I'm going to do is squeeze it together like it is supposed to be. Hold it there. Drill a pilot hole. Then if I'm fancy enough with one hand, put that in there, get a screw ready. There, now I can switch back to the small pilot hole bit and drill the rest of my pilot hole. There we go. Now the bottom is attached. We successfully have a tube. You can't really see through because it is so dark. Now you can see how the air is going to flow over those. Alright, so now I've got my front panel. So what I'm going to be doing is placing my fan on this front panel. Now I need to find, first I need to find the center vertically, because that isn't going to change. I am, however, going to cheat it up just a little bit because I have no heatsink at the bottom. So first I'm going to find the center. So I have a little line there to mark center. So now I just need to figure out where I want it vertically to be centered. Or not centered, just where I want it vertically. So now I have a center X right in the middle where the center is going to be. Now this is a new tool for me, so I don't know how well it'll work, but I have a circle adapter for the Dremel. I'm just going to fire it up and see how it goes. I would say that worked great all up until one point, and you can see right about here where the centerpiece dropped and it fell down. But that's okay, you're not really going to see that. It's going to be hidden behind the fan. So you can sort of see where it went a little lopsided. So, looks like the fan covers it perfectly. Well, take that back. Fan hole is slightly big, but you can't really tell. The main part you notice is right there at the bottom. So, not much I can do about that. Maybe fill it with some wood putty or anything else. But definitely a hole there. And voila! We have our nice tunnel effect really coming into play. Really looking good now. Still need to trim this back side. May even do it with a circular saw, who knows. But that's going to be our exhaust, so I'm not too worried about it. If need be, I can make another. I can make another panel, add another fan to pull out exhaust if I find out that it gets too hot. As of right now though, I think one fan should do it. Now, there won't be much grip with these screws, but it should be enough for what I'm trying to accomplish. And there we go. So, now we have miners on three sides, our bottom, our intake fan, and if we need it, an exhaust port for our exit fan. So next time I will be completing the wiring on the fan, which really isn't all that hard, and yeah, we'll get it up and running. We're now moving on to the electronics-ish portion. All we really need to do is wire up the fan. I have a 12-volt power supply which takes a barrel connector. I also have the female end of that I'm going to be using. Two fan connectors with the pins that go inside of them. I like modular. It enables me to change out anything that goes wrong with it. Makes it much easier to deal with. I also, of course, have a soldering iron, some little pair of pliers, wire cutters, wire strippers, and of course some wire. I'm going to cut the wire in little lengths. They don't need to be long, 2-3 inches, something easy to deal with. Attach the connectors to it, then solder the connectors onto the little female barrel connector. It's all pretty simple, so I'm going to go ahead and get to it. So I'm going to start out with cutting some wire. I'm only going to need about 3 inches. To make everything nice and neat, I like to keep the wires the same length. I'm going to go ahead and strip back. Wrong way. I'm going to go ahead and strip back a small portion of the wire. I'm going to do that on both red and black, which are going to be my positive and negative. And then believe this should be plenty long for these pins for the fan. For the other side, I'm going to do them slightly longer, but not by much, so that they can plug into or be soldered to the barrel connector. Fan pins, you twist them just sort of back and forth until they break off. I just realized I forgot. Since we have the possibility of having two fans, I'm actually going to be attaching two fan connectors. So if I do decide to add the second exhaust fan later on, I'll already have that made. Now for these fan connectors, the pins on them can be a little bit tricky. What I do is I use the first groove to hold on to the casing, which I'm causing terrible shadows, and the second one to hold on to the actual wire. I don't know if I can do that without so it looks something like that. So there I have the wire attached. Now I'm going to attach the casing to it just so it doesn't pull out. So there we have one pin connected. I'm going to go ahead and do the others now. So now that I have the wires made, I'm going to go ahead and put the wires inside the connectors. As you can see, there's little notches along the top. There's a small part that sticks out, and I can't hold my hand still enough, but that is going to go to the top. I base where they're putting off of this, what location each pin is. So the red, the positive, is second from the outside on the side that has the grooves. Now this connector is made for a 4-pin fan, and our fans are actually 4-pin, but we don't need the other two. All we need to do is provide power. Sometimes they need a little bit of persuasion. You'll hear a small click whenever they go in, and you'll have the pins inside. So now I have my fan connectors wired. Next, what I need to do is go ahead and solder these to the power connector. I'm going to give them a slight twist just to make it a little bit easier for me to attach them. Now, to make sure these stay together and to make soldering easier, I'm going to go ahead and tinge the tips of them a little bit. Basically, I'm getting them good and coated in solder. Now that will make attaching them to this much easier. I am actually going to go ahead, as long as I don't knock it over, put a little bead of solder on each connector if I can. Now the negative pole on this connector is going to be the longer one. Since I already have so much solder on these, I should be able now these solder joints are not very pretty. What I like to do is use some heat shrink wrap, and I would put that over the wires first, solder it scoot it down and then use my heat gun to go ahead and shrink it up, and that really covers the connections. This is going to be internal inside the unit or the tunnel, so it's not a huge deal, but it does help and it makes it look a lot nicer and neater. With this done, all we really need to do now is plug everything in and see if it works.